Jenna, Todd, and Lisa crept past Old Man Lambert's house, outside the edge of town. They were quiet, but not incredibly worried about it, because the old codger was most likely passed out drunk. I mean, it was October 30th, Devil's Night, or Mischief Night, depending on where you live. Any excuse for the living fossil to drink, and he'd do it. Not much else to do around here anyways, which is also why they're heading to the back of his huge property to summon demons. Boredom. They were short one. Jackson was supposed to meet them at the AM/PM at 11. By the time 11:30 rolled around, Todd said to hell with him. Lambert's farm was chosen because it was solitary, and supposedly there are unmarked graves on one side of the perimeter.
See?
Todd said.
I knew there would be pumpkins back here somewhere. This guy grows everything.
Well, where's the weed then? Asked Lisa. I wish Jackson was here. Things just haven't been the same since we broke up, Jenna said, as she plopped down on a rock in the pumpkin patch. I want it to be how it was before, but not just him and I, all four of us.
The guy's a dick. I've had enough with his attitude. He stood us up. It's supposed to be 4 people. Forget about him. How many times can we call a person? Give me that manual.
Lisa opened her backpack and pulled out the weathered book that she'd found in her grandfather's attic. She snuck it out, but she'll put it back the next time she visits. They stood in a triangle and spoke the words that were scribbled on the last page. They each cut across the meaty part of their palm, and their blood dripped on the ground, creating little craters, splashing outwards onto the vines that were wrapped around the rebar in between them. They stood there, staring at each other, with that wide-eyed "did you hear that" face, but the answer was no. Nobody heard anything, except for some cows in the distance. It was bullshit, a fail, complete nonsense, just like every other ritual they tried.
Well, that was cool,
Todd said sarcastically.
Let's go get drunk at my house. My parents are gone all weekend.
Ooh, I know, Lisa squealed. Let's carve pumpkins. I haven't done that for years. They all smiled at each other. They might as well. There were dozens all around them. They each chose one, cut them off of the vine, and ran past the old man's house, back to the car, giggling. At midnight, Jackson arrived at the AM/PM, but nobody was there. He understood. He was late, but he didn't mean to be. In fact, he had no control over it. His ma grounded him, took his phone, because he punched Nick Brand, a local bully and punk ass, after school. He was proud that he stood up for himself, but his ma wasn't. When she finally went to sleep, he snuck out. He knew the plan was to go to Lambert's farm, so he drove out there. Maybe they aren't finished yet, and I can talk to Jenna, he thought. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get her back. He parked down the street from the farm and jogged past the house, looking for any sign of the other 3. He hadn't seen Todd's car, but maybe it was hidden on the opposite side, around the bend in the road. He ran straight down the middle of this huge property and was approaching the hogs. He didn't want to irritate them, in case they started making enough of a fuss to wake the old man. But maybe everyone was back here. The moon provided a soft light, like being in a gas station bathroom in the middle of nowhere. As he peered into the pen, a hog charged the fence. Surprised by the aggression, Jackson fell backwards. His ass hit the ground, and he bit the inside of his left cheek. Slowly, he got up and dusted himself off. "That'll do, pig, you asshole," he said as he headed in another direction. He explored his raw, stinging inner cheek with his tongue and recognized that familiar metallic taste of blood. Moments later, Jackson saw some pumpkins and made his way into the patch. He thought he could see scuffs in the ground. He bent down and spit. Standing up, Jackson exhaled, turned around and started walking towards the house, but he stopped. He heard several high-pitched pings, a crinkling of some kind. He retraced his steps and crouched to see what was causing that bizarre sound. It was rebar bending before Jackson's eyes. He reached towards it, scared but curious. A vine wrapped around his wrist several times and pulled him forward. He hit the ground face down. An incredible force held his arm out in front of him, and pumpkin vines entered his lungs, traveling through his armpit and between his ribs before he could even react. It was like that magic trick where someone keeps pulling ribbon from their mouth, but in reverse. He tried gasping for air, but instead got a few mouthfuls of dust, stirred up by his own struggle. He was suffocating. When it was over, his body lay lifeless for several minutes before shaking violently. Jackson, or what used to be Jackson, stood up and looked towards the moon. His dead eyes glazed over, like they had a fresh coat of lacquer on them. Todd put the finishing touches on his pumpkin, the old-school Batman logo. Not Adam West, but Keaton. Jenna carved the generic jack-o'-lantern face. You know, triangle eyes, smaller triangle nose, and a big goofy smile. Lisa carved a cat, but she used a picture from the internet to trace the image, which Todd classifies as cheating.
Yours looks good, but you didn't really do anything, Lise,
he said with a smirk. We know. You've said it 8 times, she replied.
Let's wait on the candles for now. Do you guys know how this jack-o'-lantern stuff started?
The girls glared at each other, like, here we go.
A long-ass time ago, this guy, Jack, a prankster and a drunk, ran into the devil at a bar. Jack traded his soul for one more drink, as he had no money left. The devil turned himself into a coin to pay the bartender, but Jack grabbed the coin and put it in his pocket next to a silver cross that he always carried, so the devil couldn't change himself back. Jack wouldn't let the devil go free unless he promised that he'd leave Jack alone and not claim his soul for 10 years.
Lisa interrupted. Wow, that was a great story.
Babe, I'm not done.
Well, wrap it up. We don't really care. Give us the short version. The girls laughed and Todd barreled on.
10 years later, Jack saw him again on a country road, and the devil wanted what was due. But Jack tricked him again, trapping him in a tree with, you guessed it, more crosses. Jack made the devil swear that he would never take his soul, even when he died, and with no way out, the devil agreed.
Todd!
I'm almost done, damn! Finally, when Jack died, he went to the gates of heaven, and they wouldn't let him in, because of his drunken, greedy, deceitful life. And with nowhere else to go, he went to hell to see the devil. But the devil kept his promise, and would not let him enter. With one last gesture, the devil gave him an ember from the fires of hell that Jack put into a hollowed-out turnip to light his way, and he has to walk the earth for eternity.
A turnip? Wow, I'm glad we stuck around for that story. They all busted out laughing. Todd and Lisa went downstairs and started making out on the couch. Jenna cleaned up the mess on the table and was gathering seeds to bake. The oven was preheating, set for 300 degrees. She got a text from her friend Victoria, who said that she saw Jackson walking a few streets over about 5 minutes ago. She said she pulled over and asked him if he needed a ride, but he was totally wasted and ignored her. Thanks for the heads up, she replied, and took her tray of seeds to the oven. She bent down and put the tray on the middle rack, and when she stood up, someone was standing to her left at the kitchen table. She let out a scream. Lisa and Todd came racing upstairs. They froze. They all just stood there, gawking at Jackson. He looked horrible. He was dirty. His shirt was caked with blood, and the skin on his arms and neck was all lumpy. A faint, disgusting hiss escaped his throat as he stared at them like he just broke out of an insane asylum, his mouth halfway open. He looked at the pumpkins on the table, then at Jenna, and smiled. Placing his palms under his ears, he began to force his head up. He was ripping his own head off. After a few pops and sounds I can't even describe, it wasn't attached anymore. Vines extended from his open neck, dancing and swinging around violently, whipping blood all over the walls. Todd, Lisa, and Jenna were terrified. As much as they wanted to run, They didn't. They couldn't look away. The creature set Jackson's twitching head on the table and picked up Jenna's pumpkin. It knew right where it was at, even without eyes. It then held the empty jack-o'-lantern up above the gaping wound that used to be a young man's neck. The vines pierced and wrapped around the pumpkin, and it was pulled down tight against the tip of the severed spine, in between its shoulders. The abomination turned sharply to the right and lunged toward Jenna. She was trapped. The only way out was through this thing. On the counter next to the oven was a knife block and some other utensils. Jenna grabbed the meat tenderizer mallet that Todd's mom uses to make chicken fried steak. She had no idea if this thing could be hurt, but she swung as hard as she could anyways. The creature caught her arm in the air, and the mallet flew from her hand, striking a cupboard door and finally coming to a stop on the tiles. Still holding her arm, it opened the oven and flung the racks out, sending pumpkin seeds flying. The creature started pushing Jenna into the oven when Todd snapped out of it and ran to her aid. He tried to tackle what used to be his buddy, but the thing didn't even budge. It just threw him backwards with its free hand. Todd flew back and crashed into the table. He had to lay on the ground and watch as his friend was forced into the oven, screaming. It even stood up and used a foot to get her all the way in. Then it slammed the door shut and slid the horizontal lever to the other side, locking it. Todd struggled to get to his feet as the demon inched towards him. It knelt down and picked up the tenderizer. Lisa grabbed Todd's arm and helped him up, trying to pay no attention to Jenna's muffled screams as she was cooking alive. The creature grabbed Todd by the neck as he tried to stumble away and shoved him down to his knees. Lisa fell backwards, landing on her ass where the kitchen tile met the living room carpet. It raised the hammer high and turned its torso to face Lisa, as it didn't have a neck. The goofy smile of the jack-o'-lantern was suddenly horrifying. From the kitchen light, she could see vines twitching and swaying behind the triangles. As the thing held the mallet in the air, the screaming from the oven stopped. It then brought the tenderizer down at incredible speed, and a dull thud echoed through the house. An explosion of blood fired up into the air, spattering everything in a 6-foot radius, like when you open a Coke that's been shaken. Lisa cried out, and the creature dropped the mallet, and then thrust its hand into the cranium. Still facing Lisa, it began to scoop Todd's brains out. She could hear its fingernails scraping the inner wall of his skull. She scrambled backwards, got to her feet, and ran into the laundry room down the hall that led to the garage. With no audience, the demon released Todd's body. It slumped over, finally coming to rest on a kitchen chair. Lisa locked the laundry room door and went into the garage. She hit the button on the wall, and as the garage door slowly lifted, she looked back into the laundry room. One kick was all it took from this thing to blow the door out of the frame, and the creature advanced into the garage. Lisa ran and rolled under the opening door. As she got up, she felt something wrap around her calf. She screamed into the night, but nobody came outside to see. Even if her screams were heard, the other people in the neighborhood must have thought it was a Devil's Night prank. The vine that sprang from the creature's chest was pulling her towards it. The abomination picked Lisa up by her sweatshirt with one hand and held her in the air as she was kicking and screaming. In one swift motion, it turned and threw her head first directly at the ground in front of it, smashing her head on the driveway. Blood made its way into the gutter. On Halloween morning, Ed Lambert called the police and told them that there was a dead teenager on his property. Being a farmer, he got up before dawn. When they asked if he recognized who it was, he said he had no idea, because the kid didn't have a head. He had to cancel his annual tradition, where the whole town came to his farm and carved pumpkins on Halloween Day. And it's a good thing, too, because the vines that had occupied Jackson's body were nowhere to be found. They might be hiding, lying in wait for their next victim, in Old Man Lambert's pumpkin patch. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story, email me at the address in the description. So I hope you guys liked my creepypasta. I got a lot of other ideas for stories. Maybe this will kickstart me on doing them. But I wanted to do a campy, gory Halloween thing. And the whole thing started with, what would a pumpkin do to a person? Like, what would a pumpkin's revenge be? And how do I make it happen? Happy Halloween. Be good to animals, even people. See ya.
Ja, snämar, björksbus, hörs.
If I write a story, I'll always put something at the end. Either a skit or something, but I didn't have time for a skit, so I think we'll just do a story time. So Ripley, cue the goddamn music.
Story time.
There's a couple I was gonna use, but this one involves candy, so let's do that. I was probably 10. I have no idea how old I was, okay? Stop asking me shit like that. But I went camping with a family friend. It wasn't real camping, it was like RVs, you know? And I had a bunch of pixie sticks. They didn't have those huge big ass ones that they have now. But you just take the little tiny ones and like dump them all out in your hand. Anyway, so I had dumped it in my hand. I was kind of like shielding it. It was like a little bit windy, right? I go to our RV and I open the door. This is a short one. It's not that great, but I open the door and I like take a step in and look around, and there's like some other family. I went to the wrong RV. But like right when I'm realizing that, they had like the windows open and the wind was coming from the other side of the RV towards me. So it blows through the windows of the RV. Right when we're all looking at each other, like when I'm realizing I'm in the wrong place. The wind blows the pixie stick dust into my eyes, and I'm like fumbling around, you know. Like I didn't even say anything. I just stumbled backwards out of the RV and shut the door, but I still couldn't see. So I was just standing out there like, and it hurt. Anyway, I was standing out there and finally I could like see a little bit, like kind of blurry, and get out of there, but they must have all been just looking at me out the window. And like, thank you for the help. I'm getting blinded by candy outside. And they were probably all having a real nice laugh in there. So anyway, I found my way to the real thing, but I'll never forget it though, because it hurt. So that was a random story time involving candy.
Story time.